Orbital Station Kepha 7 was old and tired. Rust covered its walls like a disease. The lights flickered every few minutes, and the air always smelled like metal and old sweat. It was the last stop before the empty places of space. And everyone who came here was either running from something or crazy enough to fly toward it. Kang. Daeho walked through the main corridor with his bag over his shoulder. He was 34 years old, with short black hair and a face that rarely showed emotion. His eyes were dark and calm, like deep water that hid what was underneath. He wore a simple pilot's jacket, worn at the elbows from years of use. Other pilots stood in small groups along the corridor. They watched him pass. Some whispered to each other. Others looked away quickly when he glanced at them. Daeho knew why. Word traveled fast on stations like this. He reached the assignment board and pressed his hand against the scanner. The screen lit up with his name and his next job. He read it twice to make sure he understood. Transport medical supplies. Destination: Colony Thesa 4. Route: Hollow Corridor. The Hollow Corridor. Daeho had heard the stories. Everyone had. 17 ships had gone into that stretch of space in the past 3 cycles. None of them came out. No wreckage was ever found. No emergency signals. No survivors. The ships simply vanished, as if space itself had swallowed them whole. The Collective Council, the AI that managed all freight routes, had offered triple payment for any pilot willing to take the job. Then, they offered 5 times the normal rate. Then 10 times. Still, no one accepted. Daeho pressed the button marked Accept Assignment. A pilot standing nearby made a sound of disbelief. He was a Mordai, one of the big stone-skinned species that lived for centuries. His name was Braun, and his gray skin was cracked with age like old rock. "Human," Braun said. "You just accepted the corridor route." "I know," Daeho said. 17 ships have died there. "I know." Braun stared at him for a long moment. Then he laughed, a deep rumbling sound like stones rolling down a mountain. "I am assigned to that ship as engineer. I thought I would die waiting for a pilot foolish enough to take the job." "You could refuse," Daeho said. "I could," Braun agreed. "But I am old. I was going to retire after this assignment. Now it seems retirement will come faster than I planned." He laughed again, but there was no humor in it. They walked together to the docking bay where the cargo ship waited. It was called the Steadywake, a medium-sized vessel designed for long hauls through dangerous space. The hull was thick and scarred from previous journeys. It was not a beautiful ship, but it looked strong. A third figure waited at the boarding ramp. She was a Thynian, an insectoid species with 4 arms and large compound eyes that reflected light like broken mirrors. Her name was Valori, and she was pacing back and forth with quick, nervous movements. "Finally," she said when she saw them. "A pilot. Now perhaps we can discuss why this assignment should be canceled immediately." "You are the navigator," Daeho said. "Yes, and I was assigned to this route against my will. I filed 7 formal complaints. All were rejected." Her voice was sharp and fast, like clicks of metal. "The Collective Council says the medical supplies are critical. The colony will suffer massive casualties without them. But sending us to die will not help anyone." "Then why are you here?" Daeho asked. Valori's compound eyes flickered. "Because refusing assignment means prison. And because—" She paused. "Because I hoped no pilot would accept. I hoped the assignment would be canceled due to impossibility." "It was not canceled," Daeho said. "We leave in 6 hours." He walked past her onto the ship. Behind him, he heard Valori make a sound of frustration. The interior of the Steadywake was functional and bare. The cockpit had 2 seats at the front, with navigation and piloting controls spread across the console. A small common area held a table and basic food preparation equipment. The cargo bay took up most of the ship. filled now with sealed containers of medical supplies. Daeho checked the systems one by one. Everything was in working order. The ship was ready. He was sitting in the pilot's seat when Valori found him. She stood in the doorway, her forearms crossed over her chest. "I have a question," she said. Daeho did not turn around. "Ask, are humans incapable of feeling fear? I have heard stories about your species. You run toward danger. You fight things larger than yourselves. You explore places that kill you." Her voice dropped lower. "Are you simply too stupid to understand when something will destroy you?" Daeho was quiet for a moment. Then he turned his chair to face her. "I am afraid," he said. Valori blinked, her compound eyes shifting. "What?" "I am afraid of the hollow corridor. I am afraid of disappearing like those 17 ships. I am afraid of dying in the dark between stars where no one will ever find my body." "Then why?" Valori demanded. "Why accept this assignment? Why board this ship?" Daeho looked at her steadily. "Because the colony needs these supplies. Because thousands of people will die without them. Because every other pilot refused and someone has to go." "That is not a reason. That is suicide." "No," Daeho said. "Suicide is giving up. This is choosing to act even when I am scared." He turned back to the controls. "Fear is not the problem. Letting fear make your choices is the problem." Valerie stood there for a long time, saying nothing. Then she walked to the navigator's seat and sat down. She did not speak, but she began running calculations on her screen. 6 hours later, the steady wake detached from orbital station, HFY 7. Daeho guided the ship away from the station's gravity. While in set course for the hollow corridor, Braun sat in the engineering bay, monitoring the engines. Valori worked silently in her navigation console, her 4 hands moving across the controls with mechanical precision. Daeho looked at the star charts on his screen. The hollow corridor was marked in red, a long stretch of space that cut through the emptiest region of the sector. Every species in the galaxy had a word for that color. It always meant the same thing: danger, warning, death. The stars ahead grew darker as they flew. Behind them, the lights of HFY 7 faded until they were just another dot among millions. Daeho's hands were steady on the controls. His face showed nothing, but deep inside, in a place he never showed anyone, fear coiled like a cold snake in his chest. He flew toward it anyway. That was the difference. He had learned long ago. Not whether you felt fear. Everyone felt fear. The difference was what you did next. Some people ran, some people froze, and some people flew straight into the dark. Because someone had to, and no one else would. The steady wake moved forward into the black emptiness of space. The hollow corridor waited ahead, hungry and silent. Daeho did not look back. 2 days into the journey, the steady wake moved through empty space like a small fish swimming through a vast ocean. The stars outside the windows seemed farther apart here, as if the universe itself was stretching thin. Daeho sat in the pilot's seat, watching the instruments. Everything was normal. The engines ran smoothly. The navigation systems showed their course as a thin green line cutting through the darkness. They would reach the edge of the hollow corridor in less than 12 hours. Valori had not spoken much since they left the station. She worked at her console, running calculations over and over again. Sometimes she would stop, stare at the numbers on her screen, and then start again from the beginning. Daeho understood. She was trying to find a way to survive what was coming. The numbers never gave her the answer she wanted. Braun was different. The old Mordai seemed almost peaceful. He spent his time in the engineering bay, checking systems that did not need checking, adjusting settings that were already perfect. When he was not working, he sat in the common area and looked out the small window at the passing stars. On the second evening, Braun invited Deho to share a meal. The common area was small, with a metal table bolted to the floor and 2 benches on either side. Braun had prepared simple food, nutrient blocks that tasted like nothing but kept the body alive. "I have served on ships for 200 years, Braun said, breaking off a piece of his nutrient block. "I have worked with many species, Thynians, Valorans, Crystari, others whose names I cannot pronounce. In all that time, I have never understood humans." Deho chewed slowly. "What do you not understand?" "You run toward danger," Braun said. "Other species run away. It is the natural response. Survival requires avoiding things that can kill you. But humans—" He shook his head, his stone skin grinding softly. "Humans see something dangerous and move closer to look at it." "Not all humans," Deho said. "Enough of them. Enough that your species has a reputation across the galaxy." Braun leaned forward. "I am curious. Is it courage? Stupidity? Some flaw in your brain chemistry?" Deho thought about the question. He had been asked versions of it before, by other aliens who could not understand why humans acted the way they did. "I think it is fear," he said finally. Braun made a rumbling sound of confusion. "Fear makes you run toward danger?" "Fear makes us want to control things," Deho explained. "When something scares us, we want to understand it. We want to face it. Because the unknown is more frightening than the known, even if the known is terrible. That makes no sense." "I know." Deho almost smiled. "But it is true." They ate in silence for a while. Then Braun asked another question, his voice lower now. "Why did you accept this assignment?" "The truth." Deho set down his food. He looked at the window, at the stars sliding past in the darkness. 10 years ago, I was captain of a cargo ship called the Morning Light. We were transporting supplies to a mining colony. Simple job. Easy route." He paused. "We received a distress signal from another ship. They were under attack by raiders. They needed help." Braun waited. "I hesitated," Deho said. "I was afraid. Raiders were dangerous, and my ship was not built for combat. I told my crew we should wait for military vessels to respond. I told them it was the smart choice, the safe choice. What happened? The military ships arrived too late. The other ship was destroyed. 43 people died." Deho's voice was flat, empty. "Later, I learned that if we had responded immediately, we could have reached them in time. We could have scared off the raiders or helped the crew escape. 43 people died because I was afraid, and I hesitated." Braun was quiet for a long moment. "That was not your fault. You made a reasonable decision." "I made a coward's decision," Deho said. "And 43 people paid for it." He looked at Braun directly. "I promised myself I would never hesitate again. Even if it kills me, even if it terrifies me, I will never stand still while people die because I am too scared to move." Before Braun could respond, an alarm sounded from the cockpit. Valorie's voice came over the intercom, sharp with tension. "We are entering the hollow corridor. Something is wrong with the sensors." Deho moved quickly, crossing the ship in seconds. He reached the cockpit and dropped into the pilot's seat. The screens in front of him were flickering with strange data. "What is happening?" he asked. "I do not know," Valorie said. Her 4 hands moved frantically across her console. "Long-range communications are dead. I cannot reach any station or relay. And the star positions." She pointed at her navigation screen. "Look." Deho looked. The stars on the screen were in the wrong places. Not by much, just a small shift, but enough to notice. It was as if the entire universe had moved slightly while they were not watching. "That is impossible," Braun said. He had followed Deho to the cockpit. "Stars do not move." "These did," Valorie said. "Or we did." or space itself changed. I do not know which explanation is correct, and all of them are terrifying. Daiho studied the readings. The instruments were working properly. The ship was functioning normally. But something outside had changed. "Keep monitoring," he said. "Report anything unusual." "Everything is unusual," Valori replied. But she kept working. They flew deeper into the hollow corridor. The darkness outside seemed thicker now, heavier somehow. Daiho could not explain the feeling, but he felt it in his bones. This was not normal space. This was something else. An hour passed. Then then Valori made a sound that Daiho had never heard from a Thynium before. It was small and high, like a child's cry of fear. "There is something on the sensors," she whispered. Daiho looked at his screen. At first, he saw nothing. Then he noticed it. A massive shape at the edge of sensor range, moving parallel to their course. It was huge, larger than any ship or station he had ever seen. And it was keeping pace with them, matching their speed exactly. "What is that?" Braun asked. "I do not know," Valori said. Her voice was shaking now. "It does not match any known species or vessel type. It is simply there, watching us." Panic entered her voice. "We need to turn back. We need to run. We need to—" "No," Daiho said. He reached for the controls. He dimmed the lights in the cockpit until they were sitting in near darkness. He reduced engine power until the ship was barely moving, drifting on its current course. He shut down every system that produced energy or noise. "What are you doing?" Valori demanded. "Being quiet," Daiho said. "Everyone stay still. Do not speak." They sat in the darkness. The only sound was their own breathing. On the sensors, the massive shape moved closer, closer. It was almost on top of them now, so large that it filled the entire screen. Daiho watched the readings. His heart was pounding in his chest. His hands wanted to shake, but he held them still through pure force of will. The shape passed by them. It was so close that if they had windows on that side of the ship, they could have seen it. But they saw nothing. They only felt a pressure, a sense of something vast and ancient sliding through the void beside them. Then it was gone. The sensor showed empty space. Daiho waited another 10 minutes before he spoke. "It did not see us," he said quietly. "How?" Valori asked. "How did you know to do that?" "I did not know," Daiho admitted. "I guessed. Prey animals survive by being still and quiet when predators are near. I thought it might work." "That thing," Braun said slowly, "is not what killed those 17 ships." Daiho nodded. He had realized the same thing. The entity was massive and terrifying, but it had passed them by. If it had destroyed the other ships, there would be nothing left to vanish. No mystery, just debris. The ships ran from it, he said. They saw it on their sensors, they panicked, and they ran. "Into what?" Valori asked. Daiho looked at the empty darkness ahead. "That is what we need to find out." The steady wake drifted through the heart of the hollow corridor. Outside, the darkness was complete. No stars visible. No light from distant galaxies. Just empty black in every direction, as if they had flown off the edge of the universe. Daiho reactivated the ship's systems slowly, one by one. The lights came back first, dim and careful. Then the sensors, scanning the space around them. Then the engines, humming softly as they pushed the ship forward. Valori was still shaking. Her 4 hands trembled as they moved across her console. The encounter with the massive entity had broken something inside her. Some belief that the universe followed rules she could understand. How? She asked, again. Her compound eyes were fixed on Daiho. "How did you stay calm? That thing could have destroyed us. It could have eaten us like food. And you just sat there." "I was not calm," Deho said. I was terrified. You did not show it. Showing fear would not have helped us. Deho checked the sensor readings. Nothing nearby. The entity had moved on, hunting for prey that made noise and light. Fear is useful when it makes you careful. It becomes deadly when it makes you run without thinking. Valori processed this. Her trembling slowed slightly. Thynians are taught to calculate, she said. We analyze threats and determine the optimal response. But that thing, she gestured at the empty space outside. There is no calculation for something like that. No optimal response. My mind simply stopped working. And yet you are still here, Deho said. Your mind started working again. That is what matters. Before Valori could respond, Braun's voice came over the intercom. You need to see this. Both of you. Come to the observation deck. They found the old Mordai standing in front of the small viewing window on the ship's upper level. He did not turn around when they entered. He simply pointed ahead. Deho looked. At first, he saw nothing but darkness. Then his eyes adjusted, and he understood why Braun had called them wreckage. Fragments of ships floated in the void ahead, scattered across a wide area like leaves blown by a storm. Deho saw pieces of hull plating, twisted metal beams, shattered windows. And among the debris, he saw the names painted on broken pieces of hull. Names he recognized from the reports. The 17 lost ships. They are all here, Braun said quietly. All of them. Valori moved to her console, scanning the wreckage. Her hands had stopped shaking. Work gave her something to focus on, something to do besides feel afraid. They were not attacked, she said after a moment. The damage patterns are consistent with high-velocity impact and gravitational stress, not weapons fire. Gravitational stress? Deho asked, extreme forces pulling the ships apart. Valori frowned at her readings. But there is nothing here that could cause such forces. No planets. No stars. Nothing. Deho studied the wreckage field. Something bothered him about the pattern. The debris was not scattered randomly. It was arranged in a rough spiral shape, as if everything had been pulled toward a central point. Check for gravity anomalies, he said. Valori ran the scan. Her compound eyes went wide. Impossible. What? There is a gravity well ahead. Massive. Dense enough to bend light around it. She looked up at Deho. A collapsed star. Dead and invisible. If I had not scanned specifically for it, I never would have found it. Deho understood now. The pieces came together in his mind like a puzzle finally solved. The entity does not kill ships, he said. It herds them. It chases them, frightens them, and they run. They accelerate to maximum speed, trying to escape. And they fly straight into the gravity well. A trap, Braun said. The entity drives prey toward the collapsed star. Does it feed on the wreckage? Valori asked. On the cruise? I do not know, Deho admitted. But it does not matter. What matters is that now we know what to avoid. He returned to the cockpit and studied the navigation charts. The gravity well was directly in their path. There was no way around it. The collapsed star's pole extended too far in every direction. Any course that avoided it completely would add weeks to their journey, and they did not have enough fuel or supplies. We have to go through, he said. Valori made a sound of distress. Through? The gravity well will tear us apart just like the others. Not if we approach correctly. Deho ran calculations on his console. A gravity well pulls things toward it, but it also accelerates them. If we enter at the right angle and the right speed, we can use the gravity to slingshot around it. The pull will throw us out the other side, faster than we entered. That is insane, Valori said. The margin for error is nearly zero. One small mistake and we die. Then we will not make mistakes. Braun entered the cockpit, having heard the discussion over the intercom. "I have been an engineer for 2 centuries," he said. "I have seen many pilots attempt difficult maneuvers. Most of them are dead now. Will the ship hold together?" Deho asked Bro and considered the question. "If I reinforce the structural supports and divert extra power to the hull integrity field, possibly. The ship was built for hard use. It might survive." He paused. "Might. Then prepare the ship. We attempt the slingshot in 2 hours." Valori stood up abruptly. "This is suicide. We should turn back. Go around. Find another way." "There's no other way," Deho said. "And we cannot turn back. The colony needs these supplies. Thousands of people are dying while we debate. They are strangers. Why should we die for strangers?" Deho turned to face her. His expression was calm, but something burned in his eyes, something she had not seen before. "Because they are people," he said simply. "Because their lives matter. Because if we do not help them, no one will." He paused. "I am not asking you to be brave. I am asking you to trust me." Valori stared at him. Her compound eyes reflected his face 100 times over. "Trust you," she repeated. "I barely know you. You know enough. You saw me stay calm when the entity passed. You saw me make the right choice. I will make the right choices again." The silence stretched between them. Then Valori sat back down at her console. "I will calculate the optimal entry angle," she said quietly. "But I think we are going to die." "Maybe," Deho agreed. "But not without trying." Braun left to prepare the engineering bay. For the next 2 hours, the ship was filled with the sounds of work. Metal clanging. Systems being adjusted. Valori's calculations filling screens with numbers and trajectories. Deho sat in the pilot's seat, reviewing the approach plan. The slingshot maneuver required perfect timing. Enter too fast and the gravity would crush them. Enter too slow and they would be pulled into the collapsed star. Enter at the wrong angle and they would spin out of control and die in the debris field. A 12% chance of survival. Valori had calculated. Better than 0. They were 30 minutes from the approach point when Valori spoke again. "The entity is returning." Deho looked at the sensors. The massive shape had appeared at the edge of range, moving toward them. It was faster this time, as if it sensed that they were close to escaping. "Time until it reaches us?" he asked. 8 minutes. We reached the gravity well in 12. 4 minutes of exposure. 4 minutes when the entity would be close enough to attack them, to chase them, to drive them into panic. Deho made his decision. We accelerate now. Begin the approach early. That will reduce our margin for error even further, Valori said. "I know." Deho took the controls. His hands were steady, his breathing even. But inside, in the place where he kept his fear locked away, something cold was spreading through his chest. The entity was coming. The gravity well weighted ahead. There was no safe choice. Only the choice to act or the choice to die waiting. Deho pushed the engines to full power. The steady wake surged forward, racing toward the invisible collapsed star, toward destruction or salvation. Behind them, something vast and hungry descended from the darkness, and there was nowhere left to run. Colony Thesa-4 appeared on the sensors 3 days later, a small blue and green world orbiting a yellow sun. From space, it looked peaceful, just another planet among billions. But the communications they received as they approached told a different story. Medical vessel steady wake. This is Thesa-4 ground control. Please confirm your cargo manifest. Repeat. Please confirm you are carrying medical supplies. Deho opened the communication channel. Thesa-4 ground control. This is the steady wake. We are carrying 200 units of emergency medical supplies as requested. Request landing clearance. The pause that followed was long enough to make Daeho wonder if something was wrong with the transmission. Then a different voice came through, older and tired. "Steady wake. This is Director Yoon Ki-nam of Thesa 4 Colonial Administration. We had given up hope. No ship has successfully crossed the Hollow Corridor in over a year. How did you survive?" "We flew carefully," Daeho said. It was not a complete answer, but it was enough. "Landing coordinates are being transmitted now. Medical teams will meet you on arrival." "And pilot." The director's voice cracked slightly. "Thank you. You have saved many lives today." The steady wake descended through the atmosphere, its damaged hull groaning with the strain. Braun had done temporary repairs during the 3-day journey, sealing breaches and reinforcing weak points, but the ship was barely holding together. It would need weeks in a repair facility before it could fly again. They landed on a platform outside the colony's main medical center. As the engines powered down, Daeho looked through the cockpit window at the people waiting below. Doctors, nurses, patients in wheeled beds, brought outside to see the ship that had brought their salvation. Some of them were crying. Valori stood beside Daeho, watching the scene. "Why are they crying?" she asked. "We brought good news." "They are crying because they are alive," Daeho said. "Sometimes humans cry when they are happy, when relief is too big for any other expression. That seems inefficient. Perhaps, but it is honest." The cargo bay doors opened, and the medical teams rushed inside. Daeho stayed in the cockpit, letting them work. This was their moment, not his. He had done his job. Now others would do theirs. An hour later, when the cargo was unloaded and the patients were being treated, Director Yoon came to see them. He was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes that had seen too much suffering. "The disease was spreading faster than our projections," he said. "Without these supplies, we would have lost the colony within 2 weeks. Not just the sick, everyone. The medical system would have collapsed entirely." "How many lives?" Valori asked. 12,000. Give or take. The director looked at the 3 of them, the human pilot, the Thynian navigator, and the Mordai engineer. 12,000 people will live because you flew through something that should have been impossible. Daeho felt nothing. Not pride, not satisfaction, not relief. He had learned long ago that saving lives did not erase the ones you had failed to save. It simply added to the balance, pushing the scale slightly toward the side that meant you were not a complete failure. "We will file a report with the Collective Council," he said. "Details about the Hollow Corridor, the entity, the gravity well. Other ships might be able to make the crossing if they know what to expect. You would share that information freely?" The director asked, surprised. "It does not belong to us. Knowledge that can save lives should not be hoarded." The director nodded slowly. "You are an unusual human, Captain Kang. I am just a pilot." They stayed on Thesa 4 for 2 weeks while the steady wake was repaired. During that time, Valori and Braun filed their reports with the Collective Council, providing detailed data about the entity, the collapsed star, and the safe passage calculations they had developed. The Hollow Corridor was reclassified from forbiddance to navigable with extreme caution. New sensor protocols were issued to detect the invisible gravity well. Warning beacons were planned for the corridor's entrance. Future ships would have a chance on the last day before their departure. Valori found Daeho in the ship's cockpit, running pre-flight checks. "I have a question," she said. Daeho did not look up from his work. "Ask, will you take another dangerous route after this?" "Probably. Someone has to. That is what I thought you would say." Valori paused, her 4 hands clasped together in a gesture Daeho had not seen from her before. "I would like to join your crew permanently, if you will have me." Now Daeho looked up. "Why? You almost died. You said yourself this was suicide. It was. Valori's compound eyes reflected the light from the console. But I did not die. And I spent my entire life calculating probabilities, trying to find safety in numbers. The hollow corridor taught me that safety is an illusion. There is only action or inaction, movement or stillness. She paused. I would rather move. I would rather act, even if it frightens me. Before Deho could respond, Braun entered the cockpit. The old Mordai had recovered from the journey, his cracked stone skin healing slowly in the planet's sunlight. I have canceled my retirement, Braun announced. Deho raised an eyebrow. Why? Because I have served with many species for 200 years, and I have never seen anything like what you did in the corridor. I want to see what else humans will fly toward while terrified. He smiled, a rare expression for a Mordai. It seems more interesting than dying quietly on some forgotten asteroid. They left Thesa 4 that afternoon, the steady wake rising through the clouds and into the stars. Deho set course for orbital station Kepha 7, where new assignments would be waiting. When they arrived, word had already spread. The pilots who had refused the Hollow Corridor assignment gathered to see the ship that had survived. They asked questions, demanded details, wanted to know how Deho had done the impossible. A young pilot, barely old enough to fly, pushed to the front of the crowd. "What is your secret?" he asked. "How did you stay so calm?" Deho looked at him for a long moment. Then he said, "I was not calm. I was terrified the entire time." "Then how?" "Fear is not the enemy," Deho said. "Surrender is. Fear tells you something is dangerous. It gives you energy, sharpens your senses, prepares your body to act. Fear is useful. The problem is when you let fear make your decisions, when you run without thinking, when you freeze instead of moving, when you give up because being afraid feels like failing." He paused, looking at the crowd of pilots and crew members who had gathered to hear him speak. "I was afraid in the corridor. My hands shook the entire flight. My heart pounded so hard, I thought it would break my ribs. But I did not let my shaking hands control the ship. I did not let my racing heart make the choices. I acknowledged the fear, accepted it, and then I did what needed to be done anyway." The young pilot nodded slowly. "So courage is not the absence of fear?" "No," Deho said. "Courage is fear that has learned to move forward." He walked past the crowd toward the assignment board. A new route was waiting, another path no one else would take. Another place where someone needed help and no one else would go. Valori and Braun were already at the ship, running pre-flight checks. They had become a crew now, bound together by something stronger than contracts or assignments. They had faced the dark together and survived. Deho pressed his hand against the scanner and accepted the new assignment. The destination was far, the route was dangerous, and the odds were not in their favor. He walked to the ship, climbed the boarding ramp, and took his seat in the cockpit. "Next assignment accepted," he told his crew. "Departure in 2 hours. Another dangerous route?" Valori asked. "Yes, good." She began running calculations on her console. I was getting bored of safety. Braun laughed, the sound like stones rolling together. "Humans are contagious. I think you have infected her with your madness." Deho almost smiled. He powered up the engines, felt the familiar vibration of the ship coming to life around him. Outside, the stars waited, endless and dark and full of terrors. But somewhere out there, people needed help. Supplies needed delivery. Lives needed saving, and someone had to go. Deho guided the steady wake away from the station, into the black between stars, toward the next impossible journey. His hands were already shaking. He flew anyway. The steady wake screamed through space at maximum speed. Every system pushed to its limit. every piece of the ship straining against forces it was never designed to handle. Daeho held the controls with both hands, his knuckles white from pressure. The sensor screen showed two things that wanted to kill them. Behind, the entity closed in, a massive presence that filled the sensors like a spreading stain. Ahead, the invisible gravity well-weighted, patient and absolute. Valori called out numbers in a voice that had moved beyond fear into something mechanical. Distance to gravity well threshold, 40,000 kilometers. Entity closing, 30 seconds until contact range. Entry angle deviation, 2.3 degrees, correcting now. Braun, Daeho said into the intercom. Status report. Hull integrity at 92%, Braun replied. His voice was calm, almost peaceful. I have diverted all available power to structural reinforcement. The ship will hold together or it will not. I have done everything possible. Good enough. The entity reached them. Daeho felt it before the sensors confirmed it. A pressure in his mind, a weight on his thoughts. The thing behind them was not just large. It was old, ancient in ways that made human history seem like the blink of an eye. And it was hungry, not for food but for fear. It fed on panic, on the desperate flight of terrified prey. The ship shuddered. Something had touched them, brushed against the hull with the gentleness of a predator playing with its food. Valori screamed, a high sound of pure terror. Her hands froze over the controls. Valori, Daeho shouted. The entry angle. I need the entry angle. She did not respond. Her compound eyes were fixed on something only she could see, some horror that had crawled into her mind from the thing behind them. Daeho made a split-second decision. He released one hand from the controls and reached across to Valori's console. He pulled up her calculations himself, reading the numbers while still flying the ship with one hand. The entity pushed against them again, harder this time. The ship groaned. Warning lights flashed across the cockpit. 20,000 kilometers to threshold, Daeho said aloud, narrating for himself. Entry angle 7.8 degrees. Speed increasing, need to compensate. He made the adjustment. The ship tilted slightly, aligning with the invisible pathway that would sling them around the collapsed star instead of into it. The entity seemed to sense what he was doing. It pressed closer, wrapping around the ship like fingers closing into a fist. Daeho felt his thoughts scatter, fear exploding through his mind in waves that threatened to drown him. Run. Something whispered. Run faster. Escape. There is no other way. But he had seen what happened to ships that ran. They accelerated blindly, changed their course without thinking, and flew straight into death. The entity did not kill with force. It killed with fear. Daeho pushed the voice away. He focused on the numbers, on the angle, on the speed. Mathematics did not feel fear. Calculations did not panic. 10,000 kilometers, he said. His voice was steady, though his hand shook violently on the controls. Braun, prepare for gravitational stress. Prepared, Braun replied. May your ancestors guide you, human. Daeho did not believe in ancestors. He believed in mathematics and determination. He believed in the promise he had made to himself 10 years ago, standing in the wreckage of his failure. Never hesitate. Never stop. Never let fear make the choice. The entity made one final push. For a moment, Daeho felt it inside his mind, looking through his memories, searching for the fear it could exploit. It found the morning light, the 43 people who died because he had hesitated. It grabbed that memory and squeezed out your fault, the whisper said. You killed them. You will kill these people too. Give up. Accept defeat. Die like you deserve. Daeho screamed, but he did not let go of the controls. No. He shouted into the darkness. Not this time. The ship crossed the threshold. Immediately, gravity seized them like a giant's hand. The collapsed star's pull was immense, irresistible. The steady wake accelerated beyond anything its engines could produce, dragged forward by forces that could crush planets. The entity fell behind. It could not follow past the threshold, could not risk being pulled into the same gravity that had claimed so many ships. Deho felt its presence fade from his mind, replaced by something almost worse. The pure physical reality of their situation. The ship was spinning. Not fast, not yet, but increasing with every second. The entry angle had been almost perfect, but almost was not enough at these speeds. "Valori!" Deho shouted again. "I need you." This time, she responded. Whatever trance the entity had put her in was broken by the chaos of the gravity well. Her four hands began moving across her console, running calculations faster than Deho had ever seen. "Adjust heading by 2.7 degrees, she said. Her voice was hoarse but steady. "Reduce port thrust by 15%. We are spinning too fast." Deho made the adjustments. The ship groaned, metal protesting against metal. Something snapped in the cargo bay, a support beam giving way under stress. "Hull integrity at 74%, Braun reported. "We are losing structural cohesion." "How long until we clear the gravity well?" Deho asked. 90 seconds, Valori said. 90 seconds. An eternity. The ship shook violently. Another snap from somewhere in the lower decks. Warning alarms screamed one after another, reporting failures and damage throughout the vessel. Deho flew by instinct now. His hands moved before his mind could process, making tiny adjustments that kept them on course. Valori fed him numbers in a constant stream. Braun held the ship together through sheer willpower and 2 centuries of engineering experience. 60 seconds. A piece of the outer hull tore away, spinning into the darkness. The ship lurched, throwing Valori against her console. She caught herself with 2 hands and kept calculating with the other 2. 40 seconds. Adjust heading 1.3 degrees starboard. Deho adjusted. The spinning slowed slightly. They were still alive. Still flying. 20 seconds. Speed increasing. We will exit at triple our entry velocity. Will the ship survive exit? Unknown. Probably. Probably. Deho would take probably. The final seconds stretched into hours. The gravity pulled and pushed in ways that seemed impossible. The ship bent and flexed like a living thing fighting for survival. And then, suddenly, they were through. The gravity released them. The steady wake shot out of the well's influence like a stone from a sling, moving faster than it had ever moved before. The collapsed star faded behind them, invisible and hungry, waiting for the next ship that would flee into its embrace. Silence fell over the cockpit. The alarms stopped. The shaking stopped. They drifted in normal space, surrounded by stars that were in the right places for the first time in days. Valori slumped in her seat. Her forearms hung limp at her sides. She was breathing hard, her compound eyes dim with exhaustion. Braun's voice came over the intercom, ragged but alive. Hull integrity at 58%. Multiple breaches in non-essential compartments. Cargo bay intact. Engines damaged but functional. We are alive. Deho released the controls. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold them in front of his face. He stared at them, watching them tremble, and then he started to laugh. Valori looked at him like he had gone mad. "What is funny?" "My hands," Deho said between laughs. "They have been shaking since we entered the corridor. Since before. They never stopped shaking. But you flew perfectly. Every adjustment was precise. I know." Deho forced himself to stop laughing. "The shaking is fear. I learned a long time ago that fear lives in the body. It makes your hands shake, your heart race, your thoughts scatter. But fear does not have to control what you do. I let my hands shake. I just did not let them make the decisions. Valori was silent for a long moment. Then she said something Deho did not expect. I prayed. When we were in the gravity well, I prayed to gods my species stopped believing in thousands of years ago. Deho looked at her. Did they answer? I do not know. Valori's compound eyes reflected the starlight outside. We are alive. Maybe that is an answer. Braun entered the cockpit, his stone skin cracked in new places, but his body unbroken. He looked at Deho with something that might have been respect. I have served with many species, he said. I have never seen anyone do what you just did. It was all of us, Deho said. Your engineering. Valori's calculations. I just held the controls. Yes, Braun agreed. But you held them when any sane creature would have let go. They sat together in the damaged cockpit. 3 beings from 3 different worlds, alive against all probability. The colony was still 3 days away. The ship was barely functional. And something was wrong with the stars ahead. Something Deho noticed, but did not mention yet. They were not safe. They were not finished, but they had made it through the hollow corridor, and that was more than 17 ships could say.